Contra was developed by Konami and hit the arcades in 1987. For some strange reason, it was renamed to Gryzor in Europe and Oceanic countries. To add to the confusion, the Japanese and American versions are virtually identical, aside from the title logo. However, the Gryzor version only allows 2 players to play the game one after another, rather than simultaneously like the Japanese and American release. Why on earth Konami thought this was a good idea is beyond rational thinking. For the run and gun game, Konami decided to go with the odd choice of using a vertical display, a format generally used for vertical shooters. Oddly enough, this unusual display format works well for Contra. The European home computer ports were all distributed by Ocean Software, although they didn't actually develop all the ports. This Commodore 64 port was handled by Colin Porch and David Blake. While the game looks pretty nice in stills, it's a far cry from being an excellent port. The gameplay is way too fast, has endless enemy bullets coming from seemingly nowhere, and is missing areas such as the mountain climb after the first corridor boss. Oh, and you have to sit right on top of the computer because the spacebar is the jump button. Still, at least it's better than the other 8-bit home computer ports. The Amstrad CPC port is arguably the best looking of the home computer ports and surprisingly the first to be released. Indeed, for the CPC game this does look lavish, but at a cost. The game flips from screen to screen rather than scrolling, making it all too easy to be killed by enemies waiting just off screen. There's also no in-game music, although I read that there was a 128K version that did contain music and sound effects. The funny thing is that this version you are seeing now is labelled as the 128K version. But never mind about that, at least this port kind of fixes the jumping issue. Rather than using the spacebar, now you simply push up and fire together, and down and fire to drop a level. Rated quite highly back in the day, but then again a lot of crap on the Specky was rated highly back in the day. This port has one of the most odd design choices ever. You can't walk backwards. So if you pass a power up, even if you're just a pixel away, you can kiss it goodbye because you aren't going to be picking it up. The game also suffers from colour clashing really badly. So many times you'll find yourself being killed by enemy projectiles that just blend straight into the background, or sometimes are not even there. Also, the enemy fortresses seem to have nobody at home. Seriously, you just stand right in front of them and no one will even fire at you. Add in the horrible having to press the spacebar to jump, and we have one of the worst home ports of Contra out there. The MSX2 version was ported by Konami and is based upon the Famicom version, but the scrolling, or should that be lack of scrolling, is just like the Amstrad CPC port. Strangely, this port doesn't suffer from the same cheap deaths from off-screen enemies as the CPC version. You've also got 2 fire buttons, like you should have, so jumping isn't an issue. Another difference is the way the damage is gauged. Rather than one-hit kills like in every other version, there is an energy gauge, which allows Bill to take more than one hit before losing a life. This port of Contra also features 19 stages. The first 9 stages are based on the arcade version, while the final 10 stages are all new to this version and are set entirely underground. Sadly, despite the awesome extras, the MSX2 port is single player only. Oh, and there's no continue option. Do you remember that iconic NES cover featuring Bill and Lance using poses of Arnold Schwarzenegger from the film Predator? Well, that art was actually originally by Bob Wakelin for use on Ocean Software's home computer ports. Konami liked it so much that they licensed it for use on their NES port. The NES port of Contra is very good, however it's not without its issues. Bill and Lance lost their individual character designs in this port. Now they are both depicted as shirtless commandos, distinguished only by the colour of their pants. The power-up icons for the machine gun and laser gun were also changed, and are now represented by letter-based Vulcan symbols like the other weapons. The rapid bullets and barrier power-ups are also more common in this version. The NES version consists of 8 stages, which are all structured a bit differently from the arcade game. Most of them contain extra sections to extend the length of the level or redesign bosses. The Famicom version of Contra is famous for being vastly superior to its Western counterpart. This is all down to Konami's custom multi-memory controller, which they call the VRC2. What does this extra power get you? Well, for the start, we have a map screen. Who doesn't like map screens? They're cool. Then we get an actual introduction to the game, plus cutscenes between stages and animated backgrounds. Gameplay wise, it's pretty much the same as the NES version. And finally, we don't have the MS-DOS port by Banana Soft because I couldn't get it to work, or the emulated Xbox Live version or PS2 budget release. What we have here is the 2011 Chinese-made Contra Evolution arcade update, licensed by Konami and developed by Punchbox. This version was also ported to Chinese mobile phones, Android and iOS. The mobile ports are pretty much identical to the arcade version, apart from they are in widescreen and have all those stupid touchscreen icons plastered all over the display. Not that it matters, since this version of Contra isn't very good at all, thanks to the horrible snappy controls. Nothing feels right at all, especially the jumping. Then we have the 3D graphics, which in my opinion look tatty and well, cheap. Some people may like them, but personally I don't rate them much. And let's take a look at all those versions of Contra running side by side.